or a question that I'm asked all the time is, how long should the marketing campaign be? Like, when, this question that I get all the time is, when should I end the marketing campaign? Like, when is it time to stop the campaign and move on to another campaign? And the answer that I always give is, when you've got nothing new to say, when you've got nothing more to add to the conversation, when you've got no more value to give, and all you would be doing is just hammering the prospect over and over and over about the offer, or over and over and over about the benefits of the product or service, then it is time to move on. But what we want to do is, we want to give ourselves the opportunity to continue marketing. We want to give ourselves the opportunity to bring something new to the table and continue to do that for as long as we can, so that we have a greater period of time to convert the prospect, right? Everything new that we have to say, or every new bit of content, every new bit of information that we can bring to the table that is of value and that potentially moves the prospect one step closer to buying, is a valuable thing to add to a marketing campaign. And so that's what these conversion chunks are all about. The objective of these conversion chunks, these blocks of information, these new bits of content that you can add to any marketing campaign, are there to extend the timeline of your marketing campaign, to take a 5-day marketing campaign and make it a 9-day marketing campaign, to take a 9-day marketing campaign and make it a 10-day or an 11-day or a 12-day, to take a 10-day and make it a 14-day, and so on. But do it in a way that adds value. Do it in a way that furthers the discussion. Do it in a way so that you're not simply hammering your prospects, but you are delivering more value. And we want to extend the timeline of your marketing campaign so that you can market longer, so that you can market harder, so that ultimately you produce more sales conversions. And so today in this training, I'm going to walk you through the 21 different chunks that you can add to any marketing campaign. Now, depending on your product or service, not every single one of these 21 will apply, right? If you are, let's say, marketing dental care, or you're an orthodontist, you might not be able to use all 21. You may only be able to use 18 of these 21, but if you had 18 new chunks, 18 new pieces of content that you can use, that you could add to a marketing campaign, you better believe that you're going to have the opportunity to make more money, generate more sales, acquire more customers, and so on. And so what I want you to do as we go through these 21 different chunks is, I want you to think about how you can apply them to your marketing campaign, how you can apply them, when can you apply them, where can you apply them to your existing marketing campaign. Now, before we dive in, I want you to understand that these chunks can be used, these additional conversion chunks can be used. You could add these simply as emails. These can become additional emails in your follow-up sequence. These can be disseminated as videos. So if you wanted to add an additional video or 2 videos to your marketing campaign, you could do that. If you wanted to do or add a Facebook Live or a webinar, a live stream, whatever it may be, or any combination of those. So I don't want you to think that you've got to do video, or you've got to do a webinar, or you've got to do, a VSL, or you've got to only do email. You can take these conversion chunks and you can disseminate them in a variety of different ways. And what I would encourage you to think about is, how can you take these different conversion chunks and use them, disseminate them, add them to your marketing campaign, and use different medium? So take one of these conversion chunks and you may add it as an email. You may take another one and add it as a simple video. You may take another one and it might be something that you do as a Facebook Live. You may do another one that is just a retargeting video, right? And you'll see that some of these are much easier to create, much quicker to create. Some of these are very straightforward. Others require a little bit more work and a little bit more thinking. But again, the aim is to take these conversion chunks and extend the timeline of your marketing campaign so that you can market longer, you can market harder, so that you ultimately produce more sales, more conversions, more new customers, and so on. And so with that being said, and if you've got any questions, I think that you're going to find that these are very straightforward. In fact, there's a handful of these that I've covered with you guys and gals in the past. You'll see how a lot of these I use and recycle on a regular basis in our own campaigns. And so I think that you're going to be very comfortable with these. And so with that being said, let's get to the first conversion chunk. First conversion chunk, very simple, very straightforward, and that is this. That is, tell your prospect the story of from failure to success. And what I mean by that in this context is, in essence, you're telling a hero's journey story of a prospect, of somebody from your marketplace, of somebody similar to the prospect. And so what you're doing is you're telling a story about an individual that, and of course, in an ideal universe, this is a real story. This isn't a made up story. This isn't, you know, a fake story. This is a real story of either a customer or of somebody that you know of. You're telling a story of somebody just like the prospect that was in the same situation that the prospect is in right now. We call that failure, struggle, turmoil. The individual, the protagonist in the story is dealing with whatever hurdles, whatever obstacles, whatever problems the prospect, your prospect, is currently dealing with. And what the protagonist, the star of the story, did was they found your mechanism. They found your approach. They came across your approach in some way, shape, or form, whether it was accidental, whether, you know, somebody was introduced, you know, and it doesn't even have to be your particular product. It can be your method, right? Like, for example, I could be talking to somebody about an individual that was struggling to pay their bills, and then they learned how to properly market on the internet, and then in the next year they went on to earn $500,000, right? That's a failure to success story, with the kind of the bridge that brought the person from failure to success being online marketing, right? And then I could use that as a way to lead the prospect into talking about the best way to do online marketing, E5 method. And so an additional chunk that you can add in to a marketing campaign is to tell a story of failure to success. Now, you might have a story of failure to success in your main marketing message. That's okay. Your prospect can't hear enough about individuals that were in their same situation, individuals that they can identify with, that discovered the thing that you're talking about and have gone on to success. If you really wanted to boil down a hero's journey to this chunk, it's just that. They were struggling, they discovered your thing or the thing that you're talking about, and after they discovered that, they went on to become successful. And so add share a story of failure to success. Now, you'll notice something. I just want to point something out here, that you'll notice as we go through the other 20 conversion chunks, you'll notice that, that some are more logical. Some kind of are more logical arguments. Whereas this first conversion chunk is a very emotional thing. We're telling a story about somebody that was in the prospect situation, dealing with the same prospect, same emotions as the prospect, same obstacles, and they discovered something that allowed them to go on to become successful, or it allowed them to go on to experience the transformation that the prospect wants right now, right? And so it's very emotional. It's not about, we're not talking about the product benefits. We're not talking about the features. We're not talking about how the product works. We're not appealing to logic. We are leveraging a story to have an emotional impact. And so that is the first conversion chunk. The second conversion chunk is really your discovery story. And in this context, what we're talking about here is, what was the impetus behind you discovering or developing the thing that you've been talking to them about? Your methodology, your approach, your unique mechanism, right? If you are a personal trainer, what was your discovery story? What led you to It doesn't necessarily have to be what led, what took you from being overweight to being thin. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about your failure to success story. I'm talking about your discovery story, discovering the mechanism, right? How did you discover, develop, stumble on the mechanism that you're sharing with them? Was it after years of research? Was it after study? Was it after lots of trial and error? Was it after you meeting a stranger on a park bench in the middle of Manhattan? Was it after being mentored by one of the greatest pole vaulters in the world? What is the discovery story behind the mechanism? And what this does is this kind of course, story is captivating in general, but what this does is this brings them along to the kind of the journey of where you were before, and then what had to go into discovering this thing that you're now offering them. And in an ideal world, the discovery story builds value or creates value around the thing. It demonstrates just how much work and energy and effort that it took for you to identify this mechanism that you're now passing on to them. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the story. I can't remember for the life of me the name of the company. It's an old ad, but it's the story that I've shared with you guys and gals before about the cigar company, and they tell the story of how they went somewhere, whatever, Panama. They had to go through the jungle. They had to hide from and avoid guerrillas, militant guerrillas, in order to find this tobacco that they then had to smuggle out, and they were only able to get a limited amount of this, tobacco that now they turned into this limited run of cigars, right? And the story, in that case, the discovery story of the tobacco that really, and the tobacco in that story, that unique tobacco, that rare tobacco, that tobacco from the middle of the jungle, is the unique mechanism, if you will, behind why those cigars were so good, so fresh, so crisp, so strong. And that discovery story adds value. Exactly. You got it, JMC. That discovery story adds value to the thing. And so this is another piece of content, another conversion chunk that you can add into your campaign. Again, this doesn't have to be necessarily what I just want to be crystal clear about something. We're not necessarily talking about adding these things into your core marketing message. We're not talking about necessarily adding these things into the body of your marketing argument. I'm talking about new reasons to follow up, new reasons to communicate with your prospect, and then give them a call to action to go buy. And so that is conversion chunk number 2. Conversion chunk number 3 is struggling versus thriving. And this is really nothing more than the difference between folks in the marketplace that are struggling and folks in the marketplace that are thriving. So if you were selling to accountants, this is the difference between accountants that struggle and accountants that thrive. It's the difference between, if you're talking to dentists that struggle and dentists that thrive. If you're talking to people that are striving to lose weight, it's people that struggle with their weight and people that do really well, people that lose their weight and keep it off. It's people that trade stocks that struggle to make money or struggle to have consistent wins versus the people that just seem to knock it out of the park week in and week out, month in and month out. What is the difference between these two? What's the difference in mindset? What's the difference in the way they operate? Right here in this context, so that you understand the difference that I am pointing out is always something that is related to the product or service that I'm selling, right? So let me give you an example. If I was selling marketing for dentists, as an example, well, one of the things that I'm not going to talk about, for example, let's say that I found hypothetically that most successful dentists are married and have families and make their family a priority. I'm not going to talk about that in this conversion chunk because it doesn't further the sale. It doesn't help me to lead them one step closer to buying. I may talk about how the struggling dentists, they confuse an expense with an investment or an investment with an expense. The struggling ones are the ones that try to get new patients for free, whereas the thriving ones understand the value of advertising, right? Struggling folks don't understand front end and back end, whereas thriving understand the importance and the difference between the two, right? So I'm going to present a message that is of value, that's educational, that helps the prospect to see the difference between the folks that are struggling, you know, in their marketplace and the ones that are thriving. And I am going to do it. I'm going to focus on things that help me lead them one step closer to the sale, right? I'm going to present things that ultimately at the end of this conversion chunk will allow me to say, and that's why enrolling in the E5 Masterclass is one of the smartest things that you can do, because it will ensure you've got front end. It will ensure you've got this. It will ensure you've got this. It will ensure you've got this, right? So in essence, I'm presenting an additional aspect of the marketing argument, and I'm just wrapping it in this struggling versus thriving chunk of content. And so hopefully that makes sense. That is conversion chunk number 3. Conversion chunk number 4 is probably the most common form of content that we use, that I would say the majority of marketers that understand, you know, content using education, some form of education-based marketing, use as well. And you've heard me talk about this before. And this is explain what to do, not how to do it.